Good morning. We are live with you from the Hyatt in downtown Port of Spain. It's day 2 of the Energy Conference, and the focus today is on natural gas. From time to time, we're joining you on the digital platform to keep you in touch with some of our guests and hear a little bit more from people who have been very much part of the conference that began yesterday morning. I'd like to introduce you now to our guest, Dr. Vernon Paltu. He is the president of National Energy. Vernon, thank you for joining us in the studio here.
Thank you, Francesca.
Tell us, what is National Energy doing to facilitate its clients in the green transition?
So that's a very broad question, and let me start probably by stepping back a bit and explaining that we are a fully owned subsidiary of the National Gas Company. So by extension, we are a state company executing the mandate from the government. And so from that perspective, what we are doing is driving the use of natural gas as a transition fuel, but at the same time, getting to the point where we want to be a decarbonized energy sector in the future. And how do we do that? There are various steps in terms of getting there. So you would have heard over the last couple of days, we talked about energy efficiency projects, renewable energy projects, carbon capture, utilization and storage, all part of the decarbonization. And we are involved in all of those projects, Francesca. However, our ultimate goal is really to get to a decarbonized energy sector. And decarbonized energy sector involves 3 segments of the energy sector: transportation, power generation, and industry. Okay, and together they make up the energy sector. And from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective, they contribute significantly to carbon emissions. Now, how we are approaching this is from besides our obligations to the climate treaties, the global climate treaties, which all of our projects would contribute to reducing carbon. What we are doing is really looking at it from an economic perspective in terms of ensuring that while we do the decarbonization of the energy industry, Trinidad and Tobago remains competitive as an energy producer, as an energy province.
Can I just ask you about that balance you're speaking
Sure.
about? In terms of existing infrastructure, existing industry, that may not be, let's say, at the current desirable benchmarks for carbon capture. How are you working with some of the older plants, so to speak, to bring in the technology for carbon capture?
So specifically to that aspect of it, you would have heard about the New Gen project, which Philip Julian is driving, and we are facilitating from a state point of view.
Can you explain how that works?
Yeah.
Is it that a consortium like Mr. Julian's investors, they will come to you and then you lay out government policy and give us a little sense of the sustainability of how you're building all that together?
And National Energy has traditionally and continues to be the facilitator for downstream energy projects in Trinidad. So new investment, we work with new investors to take them through the entire process of project development, from conceptualization all the way to execution and production. And we help with the regulatory framework to get in all the approvals, to work in with the agencies that are required. And just a couple of years ago, we would have introduced a fully electronic platform called TT Engage that gives us the opportunity to do all of what we did traditionally over the last 30, 40 years on an electronic platform. And it was so coincidental that COVID actually came about a month after we launched that platform. So what it did, it's actually allowed us to continue to operate and do what we did in a seamless fashion, even with the restrictions with COVID. So we facilitate new projects, and the New Gen project is one such project.
Can you mention any others, perhaps? The Prime Minister and Minister both spoke, for example, about the BP Light Source Solar project. Is that another one that might be under the purview of your oversight?
Yes, so we are actually working with that project as well in terms of facilitating. And we are very, I mean, in fact, we are working closely with the partners of that project. From the perspective of facilitators, we are also the landlords where the project on the Point Lisa site will be situated. So there are two project sites for that project, Lara, one in Point Lisas and the other in Trincity, and we would be the landlord at the Point Lisas location.
Any other potential greener projects on stream?
Oh yes, so
give us a little idea.
Yeah, so I mean,
because of course these are business opportunities for other providers in the economy, and give a little bit of encouragement perhaps to even new investors to have a sense of what the suite is coming to at the moment, the suite of new ventures.
And so that's a good perspective to look at it from, simply because you would see many of the projects that have been developed going forward are different from the traditional methanol plant, ammonia plant that we are accustomed to. And it will take a different format in terms of not significant utilization of natural gas, but more towards a production of low carbon energy. And so beside the project Lara and the NewGen project that I spoke about, we're also working on a project called Super ESCO, which is in essence an energy efficiency project that looks at different manufacturers and how to improve their efficiencies.
Yes, which is where we began the conversation, is for older plants and older industries that are here, how are you working with them to bring on the technology for carbon capture and other energy efficient? So maybe we can close there, which is where we began, and give us a sense of that.
Absolutely. And so it all fits in, as I told you, right? So from the renewable energy project into the generation of new lower carbon fuel like the hydrogen, which the NewGen project is. Energy efficiency completes the discussion in terms of all contributing to a lower carbon footprint. And that Super ESCO project essentially will look at all the industries in Trinidad in the different sectors and work with them to reduce the carbon footprint. And what that does is save natural gas, which in itself will be able to be transformed into higher value commodities and save the country money and create more value for the country.
And just on my last question, can you explain briefly, when we improve our carbon capture and our energy efficiency, how will that make our products more attractive on the international market going forward, let's say as compared with other energy producing nations that are not being as proactive in terms of moving into the green transition? How will that improve our attractiveness?
Yeah,
and price.
Absolutely, because all of the markers and indicators from a global market perspective point towards the introduction of penalties and carbon taxes for future production, which involves primary fossil fuel commodities. And so by introducing these systems and processes, it will ensure that our commodities, the products that we make in Trinidad, remain competitive on an international market. And, as I said from the very beginning, all that we do here, in addition to meeting our obligations, what we are doing is ensuring that there's a competitive industry well into the future for Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, Vernon. Dr. Paltu, President of National Energy, joining us here live on the digital platform of the Energy Conference. Thank you for joining us. We'll have many more interviews for you during this break and, of course, coming up nearer lunchtime. And we look forward to having you in our audience. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Welcome back as we continue with our mid-morning conversations live from the Energy Conference Day 2. And now it really is a great privilege to welcome and introduce you to no less a person than Mark Loquan, who is the president of NGC, very much in the spotlight today in particular, where natural gas is the focus of all the panel discussions that have been taking place today. Mark, give me a sense of your reaction to the Energy Chamber's initiative this year to bring the green transition into focus, both at the level, of course, of government by throwing the spotlight and to the general public and the industry, giving the nation a sense of how this is unfolding in Trinidad and Tobago.
Just good day, everybody, and thanks for
Pleasure
Francisca
having you.
for having me. And I would say the narrative around energy demand and how you satisfy that with growing populations. Going forward, there's a language of how do we satisfy that energy demand and how do you satisfy it with clean energy. I think there's a lot to be said about the climate change and the experience we see, particularly as small island nations in the Caribbean.
And it's quite common now to meet somebody on the road or a friend, and they will, as part of their natural conversation, say, gosh, it's climate change, as they're feeling, and whether it's correct or not, there is a sense at the individual level that the climate are changing.
Well, it is a fact that the intensity of hurricanes have increased, the frequency has increased, and particularly like, our country and the regional countries, you experience it. So I think coming back to the question of the Energy Chamber and this whole conference, I think it's so timely that all the players that are involved in this whole industry, one of the things that we have in Trinidad and Tobago are world-class companies. You have the BPs, you have the Shells, and you have the downstream companies, the Nutrien, Methanex, etc. And I think the good thing about that is that, all of these global companies are experiencing the same issues of how do you transform your business for the future? How do you continue with the oil and gas operations while at the same time get into the cleaner energies that are required? For a gas company like NGC, we are situated across the entire chain. We're in the upstream, the midstream, LNG, the petchem, and we're trading LNG and so on. So we're really across a chain. And I think we're well positioned, therefore, to meet the demands of the future. One of the good things that we have is we already have a built-up estate of ammonia plants, methanol plants. And the narrative that you hear now in terms of, particularly with the geopolitics that's going on, is how do you kind of, satisfy your energy security? How do you keep it affordable? And how do you make it sustainable?
Yes, and to conserve and maximize the molecules that
correct.
you do. Can I ask you a question here? Minister was speaking earlier about both the touchstone and, of course, the de novo exploration, and very successfully so. What do you think about our prospects for increasing gas extraction? And is there with the recent let's say, softening signals that we're getting from the United States and Venezuela, and our long-term interest, or should I say, the work that has already gone into the collaborations with Venezuela? Are you hopeful, or is that still, in your view, are you picking up signals that that kind of further exploration might be further down the road?
Well, I think if you look at some of the signals that you see, it's I would have to say we're cautiously optimistic, right? The fact remains is that we do have a lot of infrastructure here that we can still utilize. The gas supply challenges that we have, yes, of course, we touch on a touchstone and de novo, and you would have seen over the last years some, Barracuda, Colibri, you hear about the future programs like the Cassia compression, SIP and Ginger and Mento. Those are coming within a short time frame. In the overall picture, you can see that between now and when the big stuff like Manatee happens in 2027 thereabouts, we are in a position where you might see some gradual increase, but you are fighting decline. And some of
So it's a balancing
so it's a
act. Yeah.
balancing act of how do you navigate this period of time, get some of the step changes that are required, continue to work on possibilities, I would say,
Yeah.
even across the border,
Yeah.
and to try to utilize the infrastructure that you have. While you're doing that, of course, we have to be efficient. We have to take all the molecules we can get and make sure
Maximize them
we
and
maximize the value of it. It is not efficient to use it in power. And therefore, the projects like what Dr. Paltu may have talked about, the renewable projects and so on, quite apart from that, there's also the fact that you have the use of molecules in what you're doing in power can be much more efficiently managed. If you do that, then you can free up some molecules for the petchem sector, create more value, etc. So I think that's why you see us focusing on some of the apps that we just put out, such as energy, Smart TT, which tells everybody in their pocket, if I switch from appliance A to appliance B, this is how much I can save. We need all
can I
the
download
molecules.
that already? Is it available to the public?
The answer is yes.
Okay,
right?
great. That's good to know.
Energy Smart TT, figure out how many dollars you can save by switching to energy efficient appliances.
And that's, of course, all part of general education and bringing the question of greener, more efficient energy and your own personal pocket. It brings home what the macro picture is straight into your kitchen or living room. Can you, as we close, give an idea to our viewers on the digital platform, what opportunities there are for other businesses to join with you on these new initiatives and being part of this balanced development that you speak of?
Yeah, I think you could take it in segments. Like if you look at the immediate to the near term to medium term, we are talking energy efficiency. We are talking the ESCOs and how we do our energy audits and all the companies that could be involved in that. That's a possibility. All the way how buildings and everything are now utilized in terms of energy usage. That's an important area. If you go beyond that and you try to accelerate the transition, we are getting into the areas of what you call bluing the estate, creating point leases 2.0, which means all the carbon dioxide coming out of the ammonia plants. How do we now work in clusters? How do we now get that to enhance oil recovery, get more oil out of the upstream? Those are projects that will take time, but I think that's just the thinking we need now, as well as the hydrogen issue where you hear us talking about new gen and how we generate, hydrogen from waste heat and generate electricity from that, which then is generating hydrogen, which is then mixed with your natural gas infrastructure that already exists. So I think once you start doing that over time, then you start preparing the estate in terms of facing the markets, which are essentially imposing more and more penalties and driving some competitive issues.
So we're at the stage now where we're building another layer, another platform on which to build our energy economy for the next 20, 30 years and going forward. You spoke when we first began about the kind of infrastructure we have and point leases. And of course, that takes us back to the 80s. So we have much of what we see has been built on that. So your task is very much at the helm of putting forward this new layer, this new chapter for our energy sector.
Correct, and it's bringing everyone in the ecosystem along. This is not a case where NGC can do this by themselves or BP or Shell. This is a case where we need to partner, collaborate with university, with students, and bring a John Public along.
A new world has emerged and the imperatives of that.
Correct, and it's not confined to Trinidad and Tobago either. It's the Caribbean region, as we know. They're already doing solar projects, wind projects, geothermal projects, and that's what Carry Green is about, our website that brings all these projects into one place so that we can start utilizing the talent that we have in the region.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and to learn more about many of the exciting projects and the future that we are all building collaboratively.
Thank you very much for
much.
having me.
It's been a pleasure. We'll be back on the digital platform during the lunch hour with other guests coming in to join us, and we'll see you then. We'll be right back.